Abraham Lincoln's life did not begin in grandeur, nor was it marked by comfort. He was born in 1809 in a small log cabin in the frontier of Kentucky, where the air was thick with dust, the winters were harsh, and survival was never guaranteed. His father, Thomas Lincoln, was a man of little education, limited means, and a strong, often rigid sense of what a boy should learn by working the land. His mother, Nancy Hanks, had more wisdom than wealth, and though she nurtured him with care, her time was tragically short. Lincoln was only 9 when she passed away, leaving a void in his life so deep that its echoes would haunt him for decades. That loss, combined with the relentless hardships of frontier life, taught him early that life was often cruel, indifferent, and unyielding. But even at such a tender age, something flickered within him, a quiet spark of curiosity, a hunger to know, a determination to rise above the circumstances fate had forced upon him. Formal schooling was nearly non-existent for Lincoln. He attended a local school for barely a year, and most of his education came from books he borrowed, walked miles to obtain, and read under the dim glow of candlelight or the fleeting warmth of the sun. He read law books, the Bible, histories, and literary works that most of his peers would never have imagined. Where other boys were playing, he was studying, thinking, imagining, learning not only about the world, but about human nature, morality, and justice. Every paragraph he read, every lesson he absorbed, became a tool he would later wield to shape his destiny. He was not born brilliant. Brilliance was painstakingly forged in the fire of isolation, poverty, and determination. But life had no mercy for Lincoln's youth. Early adulthood brought relentless trials. He tried his hand at business and failed. He attempted farming, only to confront disappointment again. He sought success in love and was met with loss. He fell in love with Anne Rutledge, whose untimely death devastated him, plunging him into profound depression. Friends would later recall Lincoln's melancholy, the shadows under his eyes, the endless hours he spent walking alone, talking to himself, or staring into the night sky as if seeking answers from the stars. He wrote letters that he never sent, confessions of fear and doubt, reflections of a heart that knew too well the weight of despair. Yet, through these dark days, a stubborn will persisted. A small, almost inaudible voice whispered that he must rise again, and every morning he obeyed it. Politics, too, was a treacherous arena. Lincoln entered the public sphere full of hope and ambition, only to be repeatedly defeated. He lost elections for the Illinois General Assembly before finally winning, only to face continuous challenges and setbacks along the way. People mocked his appearance, his awkward gait, his simple speech. They underestimated his intelligence, his insight, and his capacity to endure. Every loss chipped away at him emotionally, yet each setback was simultaneously a teacher, showing him the limits of human endurance, the patience required to lead, and the necessity of empathy in understanding others. Failure was not simply a barrier for Lincoln. It was a master sculptor, shaping his character, his resolve, and his vision of what leadership must be. By the time Lincoln entered the national stage, the United States was a fractured entity. Slavery had divided the nation, hatred ran deep, and war loomed on the horizon. Lincoln was elected president in 1860, but his victory was fraught with danger and uncertainty. He assumed the highest office in a country already teetering on the brink of collapse. States were seceding, armies were mobilizing,
and citizens were bracing for a war that would become the deadliest in American history. Critics questioned his abilities. Political opponents mocked his appearance, his speech, his appearance, and his inexperience. Even some allies doubted whether he could endure the responsibilities of leadership. But Lincoln's resilience, honed by decades of personal loss and repeated failure, allowed him to confront the storm with a steady, unshakable resolve.
The Civil War was not merely a political struggle. It was a moral crucible, a test of Lincoln's courage and his commitment to the principles of liberty and justice. The country was bleeding, and he carried the weight of each life lost on his shoulders. Every day brought letters from grieving families, demands from politicians, and reports of military defeats that threatened to crush him. Yet he persevered. He knew that his role was not to protect his own comfort, but to serve the higher purpose of preserving the Union and ending the institution of slavery. It was a burden that would have broken a lesser man, but Lincoln's experiences with failure had made him uniquely capable of bearing it. The Emancipation Proclamation, signed in 1863, was more than a legal document. It was a declaration of moral vision, born from hardship and relentless reflection. Lincoln understood the risks: public backlash, intensified war, political isolation. Yet he also understood the stakes, the opportunity to align the nation with the ideals upon which it was founded. Every line he wrote, every decision he made was informed by a life spent grappling with setbacks, loss, and doubt. His failures had taught him empathy, foresight, and the unshakable belief that moral courage must guide leadership, even when the consequences are uncertain and the opposition fierce. Even after the proclamation and the subsequent Union victories, Lincoln's personal pain did not diminish. He lost a son, Willie, while in the White House. His wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, battled her own grief and emotional struggles, adding to the emotional weight he carried. Depression and sleeplessness became constant companions. The pressures of guiding a nation through its darkest hours aged him visibly, leaving him with the deep lines of sorrow etched across his face. Yet through every trial, he remained steadfast. His failures had taught him the resilience necessary to lead, not from ambition, but from principle. Lincoln's life is a testament to the idea that true greatness is rarely born in comfort or ease. It is forged in the fires of repeated defeat, relentless pain, and unwavering perseverance. His victories were not the result of luck or privilege, but a life spent confronting every obstacle with courage and purpose. Each failure had strengthened him, each loss had clarified his vision, each heartbreak had deepened his empathy. He understood that leadership is not about avoiding mistakes, but about confronting them, learning from them, and moving forward despite them. He knew that success without struggle is hollow, and that the worth of a person is measured not by unbroken triumph, but by the ability to rise after every fall. Ultimately, Lincoln's story demonstrates that the path to greatness is rarely linear. It is a path littered with failure, heartbreak, and doubt. Yet for those willing to endure, willing to learn, willing to rise again, the journey can transform not only the individual, but the world itself. Abraham Lincoln's legacy is not merely that of a president or a statesman, but a man who refused to let the pain of failure define him. Instead, he allowed it to build him, shape him, and prepare him for the extraordinary responsibility of guiding a nation through its most perilous hours. His life whispers to every struggling soul that failure is not the end, but the beginning of resilience.
that pain is not a curse but a teacher, that even in the darkest moments, the heart that continues to rise becomes a beacon for others to follow. Lincoln's triumphs, forged in the furnace of relentless adversity, remain a timeless lesson. Success is not the absence of failure, but the courage to endure it, the wisdom to learn from it, and the determination to keep moving forward. Every loss he suffered, every setback he endured, every wound he carried, shaped the man who would lead a nation to freedom and unity. The pain of failure, in his case, became the fuel for extraordinary achievement. His life tells us that greatness is never handed to the untested. It is earned in the quiet, painful, and often lonely moments when we choose to rise one more time.